Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to the Sunday gathering. It's good to see all of you already in the chat. Thank you for joining. Do you feel like you're in heaven yet? Because that that intro, I love that. Put it together a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, man, that's exactly what I want to do is go to meet my Father in heaven. So, anyway, it's just it's cool. It's good to see all you guys. Let me see the chat here. You guys are all ready to go. I appreciate you so much. Let's see here. Oh, I've got a lot going on this morning. I'm a little discombobulated. I was thinking, at about a couple hours ago, I was like, I'm going to go to this shop down the road and get some donuts for the family and bring them back real quick. It'll be great. So I started to get ready, and it was one of those things where you lose your keys, and then, or no, it wasn't my keys, it was my wallet in this case. I could not find my wallet. And so, I tear the bed apart, take all the stuff off the bed just in case it got under a cover. I go to the closet and rummage through everything, and my dirty clothes, is it in a pocket? All the stuff. And finally figured out that it was in one of our cars that... But I found it. So, yeah. So it's kind of thrown me off this morning. I wasn't able to look through, for instance, last week's material. You guys always give me a lot of good topics. And so I was not able to go through last week's extra topics and get those ready for this week. So we're just going to start from a clean slate today with the topics. But it's so good to see all of you guys. And so I see good morning to you, Squiffy Bear, Linda Connor, Rick Bowser, good morning. Stacia, Jason, Armored Raven, good to see you. Deborah Miller, Tanda, Stephanie Hyatt, good to see you. Walk with Christ, it's good to see you. Katie McD, as always, guys, it's so good to have you this morning. Walk with Christ, you put a topic on there right now of tithing. So let me get that on my list. Let me make sure all these are showing in the video too, I think. Nope, that's not what I need to do. Let's see. Let me get this adjusted just a little. I want to see all those comments. Let's do this. 40. Okay, now we're getting there. All right. Okay, so let me get my document up like I usually do and start taking these down. See, like I said, I wasn't real ready because I was like preparing down to the last minute here. But we will get there, no problem. So I've got that topic, Walk with Christ, of tithing. Let's see, I think there's been a couple others. What have we got? Good morning to everybody. Let's see. You guys are awesome. All right. And Linda, thank you for asking about me feeling better. I do feel better. As you can tell, I still sound like I have my nose plugged up. It's like I'm talking like that. I don't know when that's going to go away. Maybe never. Good to see you, Drudge Jed. It's good to have you again. All right. But yeah, guys, go ahead and get any topics you want to talk about in the chat as you're sitting here thinking about your week and about what you've studied. Maybe what someone brought up to you. Maybe you were in a conversation you didn't expect to be in and someone brought something to your mind, and that could be profitable to all of us to talk about. Anything like that. This week, as far as my study and work, let me think back over. I actually had a couple people reach out to me, different people I've talked to this week that gave me a lot of insight and some different things. So I've got some new research topics that I want to study. A lot regarding, some of the writings I've read in the past, some of the older, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, but new perspectives on that. So I'm trying to look into some of that information. And I did some study on particularly the writings of Irenaeus, the early church father from the 2nd century. And I was doing that study because I had a discourse going with someone online on one of my other videos about essentially about whether Irenaeus really was confirming a historical fulfillment by Jesus Christ in the 1st century of the statements of the prophets. And what I found when I looked at this again and again, I had read it already, but when this person brought me back to check it again, because this person interpreted it as being a future thing for Irenaeus. However, every time I looked back and double checked that, Irenaeus was speaking of his past. And so what I ended up doing was, because the passage in Irenaeus that we were in was so juicy, for lack of a better word, about the nature of Christ and who he is, what he did. It was so good, I made a video out of it, and that video is scheduled to go live today at 5 p.m. Eastern, I believe. Maybe 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific. Okay, so that'll come out this afternoon if you're interested. We all should be interested because of the topic. It's just an incredible reinforcement of what we all talk about on this channel and what Christ did in the 1st century. And that's a church father 100 years after Christ confirming it. And so that should be really actually important to all of us. It was groundbreaking to me to kind of realize what was being said there. All right, so Rick Bowser, you gave me a topic here about, did Jesus have brothers and sisters? I'll put that on. See here. Deborah Miller, you have the topic now of eternal punishment versus annihilation. Yes, that's a good one. It's one that's come up before, but I think it's been a long time since we talked about it. By the way, guys, did you guys realize that we've now passed the 1-year anniversary of Bible Scribe live streams on Sunday morning, Sunday gathering? Is that not cool? So let me show you real quick, because it's just cool. I now have, by the way, on my website documented all of the live streams. So let's see, make sure. Yeah, here we go. So on the website, on the live page, which right now, you can watch there if you want. But all the past live streams, you can see I've got them all the way back. So we go back in time here. There's been a lot of them. We go back in time and look. The first one I did on a Sunday was on August 7th of 2022. It's crazy. So we passed the 1-year mark. That's God working as far as I'm concerned. So I just thank you guys for your participation. And if you were there in the beginning, then God bless you. Thank you guys so much. It's a really interesting thing we're doing and a really exciting thing. So I just appreciate you all. All right, just want to mention that. Let's see. So our topics, as you can see here still, I've got the 3. Let me double check. I think you guys are posting some more while I'm talking here. So let's see. Jesus have brothers and sisters. Then Deborah Miller's eternal punishment. Then Tanda, have I got thoughts on the 6-day man? Sometimes I have a handle and other times I have no clue. Tanda, help me with that. Help me with the 6-day man. Where does that idea come from? Because I have thoughts on where, but I want to make sure that I understand where that phrase and that topic comes from for you. So put something else there, like where did you hear about that or see it? Katie McD, you say, thoughts on the old world, how that ties in with the little season. For example, mud flood, orphan trains, repopulation, re-education. Okay. Katie, I can do something there, but we'll have to see how helpful it is, because I think the reason you're asking the question is probably the same reason I'm asking those questions. So it may or may not be helpful, but I can certainly talk about it if you'd like to. It may not be helpful in the sense of giving you solid conclusions, but definitely a cool topic, a fun topic for everybody. Walk with Christ, you say, search gap theory. Okay. I'm not sure what that's in relation to, but if you want to put more on that, let me know. Rafa Sieber, you say, topic, sorcery is forbidden. Is it astrology? Is astrology also forbidden or encouraged? Are we to keep days and feasts no more? It's an interesting topic, Rafa. I like that. Let me see here. I'll put it on my list. Okay, so now that's up. Tanda, you say you first heard of the 6-day man from Gary Wayne. Oh boy. I want to say I would love to talk about it. I'm just, without knowing exactly what he means. Let me see if I can find something on him real quick. That'll help us prime that conversation. If I can find anything that'll help me. Oh, it's David Carrico. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah. The pre-Adamite race. Okay, that's what you were talking about. Walk with Christ. I gotcha. The 6-day man. Ugh. Do you guys know where Gary Wayne gets that from? Like, what does he use to justify that position? Because I have typically not even considered that position. I think that is such a stretch to take Genesis and do that to verses 1 and 2, that it to me feels bad, feels wrong. As far as the gap theory. Now, I don't know exactly about the 6th-day man, but okay. That may be one I have to take and research more and then talk about next week. But that one is very interesting to me. I'd like to know what their position is on it. In regards to some of these, I don't know, some of those guys, I really feel like, to be honest, they have made, and I'm talking about David Carrico, and who's the one that does, is it called The Midnight Ride? Who's the other one that does all the serpent seed discussion too? And I feel like those guys have been doing this now for years, and every single topic they bring is intended to be way out there so that people will listen. And I know that they are making money off of this. I mean, so that to me is like, it's not good. I mean, I just have, I did listen to some of their stuff early on, but I've decided very early that it was not worth my time. In fact, one of the guys that's involved with them, and I've mentioned him before, but, who was the one that, not Timothy Alberino, but he's one of them in that group. But who is it? Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle is one. I will tell you guys, like, I bought one of Steve Quayle's books because I was like, okay, he's saying all this crazy stuff. He's saying all this information about and even by the way, Steve Quayle was also, this book was all about the gap theory and the pre-Adamite race. And so I bought it. I was like, at least in a book, he's going to give me sources, information. Where did he get the postulate? Where did he get it? I will tell you, I read half of that book and I had to put it down. It's still sitting on my bookshelf because he had zero references for what he was saying. And he built a predicate in the beginning of the book, and the whole book was based on his predicate. And that is that there was some huge gap in Genesis 1 and 2, Genesis 1 verses 1 and 2, some big gap there where there were other generations of humans. And there was a pre-Adamite race. And there was all this other stuff happening. Well, he didn't give a single source for that information. So you guys know how I approach things, and I approach the study of these scriptures, and I always give you guys where I find the things that I talk about. I always try to do that because that's important. Without that, I have no credibility. And I don't have a doctorate in theology or anything like that. So, you can't just look at any, on a piece of paper that says, wow, this guy, he knows his stuff, which is actually, that's been a problem in the past. We look to people that have certificates and documents too much in the past. But what I can say is because I bring you guys the source material for everything I say, that builds my credibility, right? My credibility is built in essentially by God because I'm using his writings, I'm using what he did to show and prove out what I'm saying. So I don't know. I'll just say when I searched into those guys, I had a lot of problems with everything because they didn't source and really back up the things they were saying. And I think the book that I have, by the way, I think the book I have is this one, Unearthing the Cloud Eaters. I think that's the book I got. And I was disappointed from the first page. It was terrible. I will not ever endorse this book or any like it. So anyway, I just thought I'd rant on that for a second. Just be cautious, guys. Just be cautious with that. Be cautious with those guys. But what I'll do for your topic then, 6-day Mantanda, is I want to study that. I want to understand it, see if I can find any references they give as to why they believe all that stuff. Most of the reason those guys believe that stuff, I bet right now, I'm just telling you, gut feel, I bet the reason most of those guys believe that stuff is because they look at, and Alberino and Quayle and Pounders and all these guys, they just swarm to those megalithic structures in the ancient world, right? And so they go down to what's the one they really love to talk about all the time? I can't say it right because it's some weird South American name. But they go down there, they show those bricks at the bottoms of buildings that apparently were part of the old construction. And it's these really huge stones, right, that couldn't just be picked up very easily. But they're also molded into each other in a very haphazard way, but perfectly fitting, right? So those guys latch onto that stuff and they postulate. That's all they do. They don't know how old those rocks really are. They don't know who actually put them there, how they laid them. By the way, I have a lot of thoughts on how that could have been done. Not magic, but probably stuff we don't do anymore. Anyway, we could talk about that. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I think what they do is they start with a premise and they use those types of things to try to build out stories that are fantastic so that they get viewers. I really hate to say that, but I think that's what they're doing. David Carrico, by the way, he's an old guy. He probably doesn't have a job. This is a way he makes money. He makes some extra money online. I don't fault him for that, but I do fault him for being sensational just to draw in people. That's part of the major problems that we have in Christianity all across the board right now. So that sensationalism is just not going to cut it for most of us anymore. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm ranting now. So let's let's move forward here. I'm going to move your topic down, Tanda, and I'm going to do that like in the next week or so. Yeah, Tomcat. Good morning, by the way. You say it's entertainment that sells the rapture. Yeah, that's true. In some regard, it's entertainment. The rapture thing is more to me like you're afraid of the current world. You know it's bad, so we're going to use that fear. We're going to hype that up and tell you it's going to get worse. So you're really scared, but then that Christ is going to come back and save you from it. So that gives you this quote hope of something changing in the future that I truly believe is a false hope. But it's not false to believe in Christ or believe in God, not at all. But to believe in that event solving all your problems, that's the false hope, I believe. Armored Raven, you say include Purple Dawn into the gap theory search. I'll do that. Let me see here. Yeah, this is good. That's going to be good. If I find enough information, I could end up making a video on this topic. I mean, it's a topic everybody's like seeing and interested in. All right. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll bring this topic gathering discussion to a close, and we'll start to get ready to go here. We'll start on the topics. I think if there's any other announcements, I don't know if all of you are aware, but on the website, I have, of course, included all the new stuff. On the recent updates, just on the homepage, I, of course, added the recent video I did on the Felix Baumgartner space jump. It's just an analysis of that jump and why it really doesn't prove anything about the shape of the Earth, specifically this globe Earth. It does not prove anything about that. And then I mentioned this flat Earth debate with Greg Locke that we did, already. That'll be updated soon because today, like I said, that other video on the writings of Irenaeus is going to be released this afternoon. So be aware of that. Trying to think what else. I'm starting to do a good job, by the way, guys, of tying this stuff in. So if you, for instance, you go to like my flat Earth page on the website, I now have related videos that I've done. So here, like for instance, you can see I've got the Bible Scribe related videos to flat Earth, but I've also got Psycribe related videos to flat Earth. So that you can see all of them at one place, right? You could go to any of these that have to do with the shape of the Earth in the Bible Scribe channel, or the Psycribe videos. I have a video where I examine flight paths on a flat Earth, legacy of NASA, meaning essentially an anthology of all NASA's failures and the fact that they're so bad at what they do, yet we send them millions and billions of dollars every year to continue failing. SpaceX Dragon DM2 launch anomalies, and the Virgin Galactic Unity 22 spaceflight debunked. So those are all there for your interest if you're interested in that stuff. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to get better at doing this. So when you're going to the website, you see stuff and it's all linked together. So anyway, just thought I'd mention all that. With that, I think we probably are ready. As I always ask you guys, thank you for joining, and I just appreciate you being involved. And by that, I mean praying for one another, praying for me, and me returning that favor by praying for you during the week, which I have done this week, by the way. I don't just say it with lip service. I actually do it. And I know, by the way, guys, I want to say this. In my life right now, I feel like I have more people praying for me than I know about, because I see God's hand in my family's life in a way that is different. I don't want to get all mushy, but I'm just saying it's strong. And God is doing some things with my family, my kids, and my life that's very awesome. And I think that I have some of you guys to thank for it. So Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Yeah, it's just really cool. I wanted to mention that. But if you guys don't mind, let's pray real quick before we get started, and we'll get going. Father in heaven, I appreciate so much your involvement in our lives, the fact that you give us this ability to get together, to connect, to build the church, the real church, and just to I don't know, Lord, to connect across such a distance. You've given us this ability to do this, and I praise you for it. I praise you for the connections, the people that are on the channel right now, and those that will watch this through the week. Lord, it's hundreds of people, if not thousands. I don't know what to say except praise you. Thank you. And this morning, please give me clarity of thought and humbleness to come and just speak truth and examine and help everybody on the channel do that as well. And I just pray for the well-being of all involved, that you take care of us, keep us safe. It's in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Let's see. First on the list. You know, there's something I want to talk about. I don't want to, I hate that. I feel bad now. But I kind of want to preempt some of these. I want to talk about something real quick. This is going to seem weird too, but it's a short topic. That's why it's perfect for this Sunday morning. Here's the topic. Max Lucado and the decline of Christianity. Sounds strange, right? Let's see here. Let me get this off the screen. I wanted to mention this. This will only take 10 minutes. I was listening to the radio this week. I was in my car. And it was a Christian radio station. I think it was between songs, you know, and they have these little vignettes on these Christian stations, right, where they have someone talk about some kind of Christian thing or say a prayer or something. Well, in this case, they introduced Max Lucado. It was like a little vignette he did, little speaking thing. And he started talking. He said these words. He said, "Christianity is in decline all over the world." I was like, wow, that's somber. And he's like, essentially started saying things like, you know, memberships are falling across the United States, and people are falling away from the gospel and all this other stuff. And it was such a doom and gloom for about 30 seconds there. I was like, man, he's hammering it hard. I was like, wow. And then he came and he said, he kind of tried to flip it by saying, but there could be revival at any time. There could be revival at any time. And I don't know, this came to my mind very quickly as I was listening to this. First of all, of course, you know that what he's talking about, and I've heard this before, when they talk about the decline of Christianity, they're talking about from an institutional, organizational standpoint, right? So I thought of what we do and then what, you know, the institutions do, the organizations of the church do. And it was just interesting to me that I knew all the statistics he was talking about. You know, baptisms are down, church memberships are waning, you know, some churches are dying, and, you know, I was like, that's all organizational Christianity. That is the measurement of the, for instance, Catholic Church or the Southern Baptist Convention. But what I see, of course, when we get together every week, we talk about more things than the church ever talked about. We go deeper and we are more honest than the church ever was, the organized church. And and so I started thinking, I don't know if they have their finger on the pulse anymore of Christianity, real Christianity. Perhaps what's happening is that the real Christians are having a resurgence. That revival he's talking about, a revival's happening, but it's not the kind he wants. It's not the kind the organizational church wants. I think people all over the world are starting to realize what Christianity really is. And I think part of what we do here, that's part of it, right? We're connecting over a great distance. We're coming together under the banner of God, and we're researching, we're learning together. But the problem for the organized church is they can't put their finger on the pulse of that. They can't measure that anymore. It made me think of the passage, and it's in the Old Testament. I think it's in one of the books of Samuel, but maybe I'm wrong, where David went against God and tried to number the people of Israel because they were fighting battles, right? And he was worried about their numbers and all this stuff. And God, I believe, he struck them down because of David's disobedience in numbering, counting, being organizational in how he approached God's people. And I don't know, it just made me think, man, I just think they're upset. It's not really in decline. I think what's happening is they're upset because they can't control it anymore. Which makes me giddy, So anyway, it was a very interesting moment of realization to me that the true church, the true Christians, are seeking God outside of the church now, or at least starting to. And yeah, Cornelius, taking their money away. We have the topic tithing on the list here that we're probably going to talk about, and that might be a good segue in just a second. But I have to say, you guys, I'm just really proud of you for making this what it is, and I just want us all to realize we're part of the quote body of Christ, the church. We're part of those who follow God the Father and worship him and his son, Jesus Christ. And it doesn't matter that we're not in a building. And if you've ever, wondered, like, oh, well, we just get together every Sunday morning online. And so is that a church? Is that like a thing? Or is it valuable? Is it the thing I should be doing? I don't know, guys. I feel like it's very valuable, very valuable. And so it just came to mind. And I took Max Lucado to make me think about it, which is funny. Max Lucado, by the way, if you know much about him, he's been kind of in the hot seat a few different times because he's pretty liberal. He's quite liberal in his thinking. He's even endorsed some people. From what I read, he's endorsed a person or two that are very pro-gay rights and very pro, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to do that little section there to talk about that because I don't want people to hear, oh, there's a decline in Christianity and think that's actually legitimate. I don't think it's true. I really don't think it's true. So anyway. So what are you guys saying? Let me catch up with you. Stacia, you say that your friend and you were demonized from a local pastor's wife, all because we believe in biblical cosmology. She called us deceivers. Yeah, the whole flat earth thing, the discussion is so divisive for some reason. You know why it is, Stacia, though? You know why that is? So the reason that is so divisive, I think, is because the people that don't believe it are afraid of feeling embarrassed because if they did take the position, they would be embarrassed. They know they would be embarrassed because they know the ridicule that comes. It's kind of a self-propagating thing where people get angry and, say that flat earthers are stupid and that they're not looking at the evidence, which is actually funny because most of them have more evidence than the other side. But they see that attack, and so the people that don't believe in flat earth don't want to look into it because it's embarrassing. They are embarrassed, and they don't have the cojones, pardon my French, to look into it for themselves, make up their own mind, and be their own person, And that's part of what I think is happening in the world in general, is we have been shamed into not being bold about what we think and at least taking that out and proclaiming it and then finding out when we're wrong and fixing it. All of that stuff discourse has for a long time in America just been shut down between people. I know it's been by the way the media and the left and all of that has controlled language. They have caused us to not discourse on things, not to talk about things anymore. So anyway, I'm getting on a tangent again. Yes, Katie McD, we were shunned for questioning. It's sad. It's correct. Let's see. Armored Raven, you say, yeah, the same thing happens when you shine a light at someone in complete darkness. They wince and squirm. And Tanda, you agree with me on Max Lucado's comments that you think people are really reading the Bible for themselves now and seeking the truth. I think that's true. And by the way, if you're in the chat or listening and you don't believe in flat Earth, I don't care about that. I mean, I believe that it's mostly true, but that shouldn't prevent us. That's what we're talking about. It shouldn't prevent us from working together. I'm not gonna always be talking about that. You know that from my channel. I go into tons of different things. So I just want to say that every time I want to make sure people feel comfortable to be here in the conversation, and that no one's going to attack you. If someone does attack you, or either way, I'm going to shut it down. So anyway, just want to say that. Okay. All right. So let's go on to our first topic. We'll talk about tithing for a little bit. And I hope I can do it justice. I have done videos on tithing in the past. So if you're interested in this topic, it's actually one of my earliest videos was on tithing. It was a 4-part series. I think each part's about 20 minutes or so. So it's not terribly long. I hate really long videos. I try not to do that. But the topic of tithing, yes. Let me see if I've got that in my notes to where I can go through some stuff without having to research it again on the fly. That's always hard. All right, tithing. Okay, I think I do have some information here, at least, where we could start. All right, so I'll talk from my heart first on tithing. So I was in, of course, Protestant churches all my life, and tithing was a big part of what we did. It was always something we talked about and tried to do. I know there were times where we did tithe. My family, meaning as I was a child, my father would tithe, and I know there were probably times where we couldn't do it. We were strapped and stretched so far, we didn't tithe. Of course, I'm sure there was, for my father, there may have been some shame there or some, self-doubt or whatever it is. But, and Linda, I see you mentioned the 501c3. I'll try to remember to put that as a part of this. Yeah. So growing up, we always tithed. That's all I'm trying to say. And then as I began my family, we always tried to tithe. But I felt like we were strapped also. It was hard for us to always tithe a full 10%. And of course, they teach you a 10% before taxes. So if I got a paycheck for $1,000, for instance, then I'm taking $100, throwing it to the church. I almost said throwing it away, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean taking $100, giving it to the church, and then taxes come out. So then that's about 20%. So I've immediately lost 30% of everything I make. Immediately. And on the remaining 70%, I was trying to raise 2 kids, pay for a house, keep my kids out of the public schools. And we were trying to, of course, do some private schooling. For that, we didn't necessarily feel confident in the homeschooling thing. So we were trying to use that money to go towards private schools. At the end of the day, we were scraping by. We had some really hard times where Of course, finances is one of the biggest things that causes strife in marriage. And my wife and I had a lot of times where we really struggled and had arguments, and it was just painful looking back on it. Looking back on it, it was terrible. It was, financially a terrible time in our life. And we have the church over here saying, you got to tithe. If you're not tithing, God's not going to bless you. I mean, he's going to withhold those blessings if you don't tithe, right? So we're thinking that way. We're feeling guilty. But there were some times I started deciding, like, I just can't tithe. I mean, we're trying to do everything we can for God. We want our kids in Christian schools. We want to be involved in our church all the time. We want to do all these things, but the tithe is a step too far. It's breaking us. Like, I felt like making the decision to take our kids out of a Christian school so that we could tithe, that's a silly decision. It's like we're going to jeopardize our kids by putting them in a public school at just so we can pay the church a 10%. That's nonsense. So anyway, that was my early married life with our kids. By the way, we didn't have kids before we were married, but we had them very soon, like right away, unintentionally too, which is funny. So we ended up, 9 and something months after our marriage, we had my son. So we didn't have much time before we had kids, and anyway, so all that was happening, and it was at that time I really started questioning, is the tithe something I have to do? Is it something God really wants of me? It feels bad. It felt wrong. So I started really investigating. So the investigation brought me to a point where I decided that tithing was not required by Christians. Now, I'll show you some of the study on that on the screen here. Just give me a second. So let's see here. Get some of this other stuff out of the way. Yep. That's all from my video I was making. Okay, I got a lot of junk. Let's close all that. Close that. Okay. So on the tithe, some of this is just stuff I wrote. Let's see. The definition of the word tithe, by the way, is tenth. Okay, that's the Hebrew word behind the word tithe in your Bible. It literally means a tenth. So the word tithe is not some title for something. It's essentially the measurement of how much, and here's what it is. It's the measurement of how much of the produce of the land for the Israelites that they were supposed to set aside and take to the temple and give to who? The Levite priests who ran the temple, because they ran the temple and they had no income. Zero. They didn't have time to go out and farm. So they would take a tenth of their grain, that the people would take a tenth and take it to the Levites. Of course, this was a beautiful thing in a way, because the Levite priests helped them with their sacrifices and cleansing themselves before God and in the sense of the law. And the tithe, by the way, is defined in the law in Deuteronomy. But the New Testament teaching on tithing is, as is said in 2 Corinthians 9:7, each man should give cheerfully as he sees fit from his heart. That's my shortened version, but it says, "This I say, he which sows sparingly would reap sparingly, and he that sows bountifully shall reap bountifully. Every man according as he purposes in his heart, so let him give." Every man as he purposes in his heart should give according to that, not grudgingly or of necessity. What do we all tithe of in the modern church? Out of necessity. They say you have to. You must do this, or you're out of favor with God. They don't always say that, but that's what they mean. They hint at it, and if they don't just outright say it, some do. Some say you're going to be under a curse if you're not giving the tenth. For God loves a cheerful giver, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, having all sufficiency, that means for you having all you need to live, you may abound to every good work. Does that make sense? These words shouldn't be minced. This is very clear. But this isn't what our churches teach. They go back to the Old Testament. Okay? They go back to, for instance, where is it? Is it Micah? Is it Malachi? Yep, Malachi. They go back to Malachi, chapter 3, and they say, you have robbed me. This is what the pastors will say from the pulpit with their finger in your face. You've robbed me. But you say, where have we robbed you? He says, in tithes and offerings. So the pastor gets up, he says, you haven't given your tithes and your offerings. Well, what was the tithe? It was the 10th of the produce of the land for the Levite priests, so they had something to eat. And the offerings were the offerings, the sacrificial offerings. But you're a modern pastor won't teach you that, right? So he says you're cursed with a curse. And the pastor will say that. I guess that's where he gets it. Malachi chapter 3. But who was Malachi chapter 3 written to, people? Say it with me. Israel. The nation of Israel. It was not even given to the Gentiles, nor were they expected to do anything like this. Okay, so anyway. For you have robbed me. Bring ye the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. They don't even stop from the modern pulpit. They don't even stop to say, why does it say so that there's meat in my house? Maybe the tithes were actually food, which if you look in the Old Testament and the declaration of the law, of course they were food. That was the point. It was food or flock or whatever, right? And but he says, they'll say, if you give, then I will open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there will be not enough room to receive it. And so then you see the health and wealth preachers like Joel Osteen with a mega church, and he has beautiful suits that cost $3,000 a piece, and he has beautiful cars and a beautiful wife and all this stuff, a huge house in Texas. And he says, look at me. I've got all this stuff, and it's because I tithe. And you should tithe, and you'll get the stuff too. You'll get the stuff. It makes me so mad to say those things and to think about that. So mad. But they use this, and they use it against you in the church. That's what they do. So let me look at your comments, guys, see what you're saying over here. I've probably missed about 100 things. Stacia, you say it's throwing it away. John Fry, I don't think I said good morning to you, but it's good to have you. Thank you for joining. You say, when your Father in heaven puts it on your heart to give, hasn't, but the money goes straight to people who need it. Exactly. I think I know what you're saying. Absolutely. Your Father will prompt you because he loves you. He wants the best for you and those around you. So when you give, when you're prompted and you do that giving, it's exactly what he wants. And that's the reality. Is and then one of the things that I wish we had more on this church that we have made between you and me, is I wish we had more of the ability to do some of that stuff to help each other. We got to figure that out in some way, but that's here nor there. I'm just saying, it's on my mind. It's been on my mind. But because we're not connected physically, we can't get in the same room together and talk. It's hard to do those kinds of things. Harder, not impossible. But I'm just saying, that's what the whole cycle should look like, is this loving giving of us when we are prompted. If we can give to people who need it, give to each other to help, that's the beauty of what the New Testament teaches. As you are prompted, you give. However much you can give, if you are prompted to do it, you do it, and you don't deny when you're prompted to give, when you know it's needed, right? I mean, it's that simple. It's not difficult. Oh, goodness. I really go off on this one. Linda Connor, you say, and the church will not help their flock financially. Ask them to pay your rent or mortgage because you can't. Exactly. That's the thing that I don't understand about the church. Like you're saying, they take all that money and they take first out of that money, they take what the pastors in the church is going to need, especially to pay off their mortgage, because they went into sad hock to get the building that you're sitting in, the pews that you're sitting in. That's all in hock. It's all mortgaged. The Jewish banking lenders have the control of that material. And as Linda mentioned, or someone, or maybe it's Cornelius, mentioned this, the 501c3, they also, from a governmental standpoint, do have some control over what you can say inside those walls. The banks own your building and all your material assets. The organizational church owns you from the pulpit, as well as the government, because of the 501c3 agreements. They own also they know and are made aware of every bit of the distribution of that money. Do you hear me there? The 501c3, by the way, requires they report their giving, all of it. So now the government has a full annotated list of everything that was given and where every cent went for the church. That, my friends, is evil. I'm just saying. So there's just so many gotchas in there regarding tithing. So I'm going to continue through your comments, guys. See, I'm going to hide the screen so y'all can see those comments too. Ken Joss, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's good to have you this morning. You say, if you're looking at the chapter in Malachi, it's addressing the priests not using the tithes in the storehouse for the poor, but misusing it, and the poor aren't getting taken care of. Got you. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, Katie McD, you mentioned Kenneth Copeland. He's one of the ones I was thinking about in my head, but I couldn't think of his name, so that's why I said Osteen, but they're all the same. Man, that Copeland, man, he is a weird dude. Weird, man. Jeez. B. Nichols, I hear you. I do wish we could interact outside the live gatherings. You know, it may happen. It may happen in the future. Let's just keep our hearts on that. Think about it. You ask if I'm on Facebook. I have a thing on Facebook. I have a page on Facebook. It's probably findable. But I don't check it anymore. I haven't checked it in a long time. So I really hate that. My time is limited, and so that's one of those things that got lower on my priority list until I kind of stopped checking it. But if I think there's value there, I can try to make more of an effort. Drudge Jed, we should all become Amish. I don't know, man. I'm not going to say it's true, but I have some strange suspicions about the Amish. I'm such a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. Everything looks wonderful about the Amish, except the fact that our government allows them to do what they do. That to me is a scary thing. I don't want to go into it. I don't want to go into it, Stacia, because it's all speculation on my part. But I don't know. The Amish are interesting to me. Interesting. Anyway, that's all I'll say. Hound Jog, welcome this morning. It's so good to have you. Good to see you on there. You say your old super church would give out $700 if you were a tithe-paying member, but only for 2 months. So they had gimmicks for you to give, right? Oh my gosh. How are those super churches exist unless all the money is coming in? See, that's the thing we have to understand too. Their tithing is required or the church falls apart. The tithing supports that building being in existence. Because it's all in hock. They went ahead of God and did something that even God forbade among his own people. He said, neither a borrower nor a lender be. And in Proverbs that's stated, and I think in Deuteronomy or somewhere in the law, it says that they should never borrow or go in debt to another nation. So if it's good enough for Israel, it's good enough for us. I'm saying we shouldn't be going into debt in our churches. Shouldn't happen. And the reality is, if the church was doing what it was supposed to do with people taking care of each other, none of that would be required. And if the church wasn't sending all its money overseas, which, I mean, supporting missionaries is one thing, but some of these organizations, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't think Christians should feel comfortable with that. We should know where our money's going. We should make sure of it so that it's used for God's kingdom, for furthering that. So anyway, Tanda, you say that I've hit the nail on the head. You lived under NAR and WOF for nearly 54 years. And learning the biblical truth about tithing was so freeing. Yeah, it was for me too. Now, New Apostolic Reformation is NAR. What's WOF? I don't know if I know that acronym. Squiffy Bear, no, I don't think that the Amish is a satanic cult. I'm not saying that at all. But if it was, I mean, because of the temperature in the world right now, it wouldn't totally surprise me. But I don't think they're a satanic cult. But I don't know. I don't want to talk about that. It's sad. Katie McD, I love what you say there. You will try to pray for the Father to place people in my life's path to help. Instead, he definitely finds people for us to help. Yes, I think he will do that, especially if you pray it. You pray it, it's going to happen tomorrow. He's going to give you someone that needs help. You're going to have the opportunity to do it. So I think that you're right on. I think that's it. All right, as far as tithing, I don't want to take too much more time on it. I do have those videos, and it goes through everything that's on this screen in front of me. I do want to mention, by the way, there's the tithing to Melchizedek that occurred in, what chapter was that? Leviticus? No, Genesis. Abraham tithes to Melchizedek, the priest of Salem. Sounds a lot like Jerusalem. Anyway, there's a lot about Melchizedek. And again, even though this is prior to the law being given, it seems to be the same thing. God gave Abraham victory in a battle, the war against Sodom and Gomorrah, the spoils of war. So because God gave that increase, Abraham took a tenth of that out of tribute, essentially, to King Melchizedek. Now, tribute's another thing to think about. There's this concept in the Bible of tribute, which is also, I think, about a 10% thing. So the word tithe, meaning tenth, seems to matter. It seems to match. And this, to me, is not a support for that we should tithe, because this was prior to the law. I still don't think this means we should tithe to the church. This is, again, the spoils of war, the riches, the food, the flocks, all of that stuff. He gave a tenth to King Melchizedek as he passed through. So to me, that's a similar idea to the tithe that was given to Moses, thousands of years later. And so anyway, just wanted to mention that. But that's all in my video too. I'll just, leave that for now. I don't want to keep talking. I think we've done good on that today for a short intro to tithing. All right. So next topic. Rick Bowser, you asked if Jesus had brothers and sisters. I don't know if I'm going to be very good on this one. Rick, you always ask tough ones. And so I'm thinking about it. Let me... So you're asking if Mary had additional children with Joseph. Is that what you're asking, I think? It would seem to me that if that occurred, it would definitely happen after they were married. They wouldn't want to, of course, perpetuate the idea that they were having children out of wedlock, which was already happening because of Jesus' birth. So I don't know that I have much information on this as far as if Mary and Joseph had additional children. after Christ. But you're saying the second was James the Just. I feel very unequipped for this topic. I will say that. Let's see. While we're talking here, let's okay, so I'm going to the gutter here, but I'm looking at Wikipedia. I guess we'll just look at this together, guys, because I'm not going to be very much help on this topic other than just looking it up with you and thinking about it, talking about it. So James the Just, the brother of Jesus, quote unquote, according to the New Testament. Okay. Matthew 13:55. Let's just ditch Wikipedia and we'll go straight to Matthew. Is it 15? 13:55. Okay. Matthew 13:55. And they said in verse 55, when he had come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch as they were astonished and said, whence has this man had this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is his mother Mary, his brethren, James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? Brethren. And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then has this man all these things? That word brethren is one I definitely want to understand better. I'm going to go to the Greek real quick. Adelphoi, yeah, that is the word brothers, not nothing special about it. It does, however, I'll say, look at that in Strong's. It does say a brother or a member of the same religious community, especially a fellow Christian, because that's the word used in other places for just general brethren, you know. So apparently that can mean maybe both things. I'm not saying it's one or the other specifically, but it has the possibility of being brethren in terms of just people, or maybe brothers. I wish I knew more of Greek so I could say, well, there's another word for brother, but I don't know if I know that. So this is Thayer's lexicon, just mentioning that it says further on this point, where the Lord's brethren are distinguished from the apostles. Luke 2:7 says essentially Mary had no other children after Jesus. Is that true? Let's look at Luke 2:7. Bible. Luke 2:7. She brought forth her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Well, see, that doesn't make sense. Why did it say that then? Oh, it said, no, I'm sorry. I misread this. I'm going too fast, guys. Sorry. Where in Luke 2:7, had Mary borne no other children, it would have said a certain thing in the Greek versus what it did say. So the implication is that she could have had more children, okay, according to what they are saying. And that sounds like, you know, he knows more about the Greek than I do. So if that's true, then it sounds like the possibility is there. So then back to Matthew 13. Sounds like it's logical, possible that James, Joseph, Simon, Judas were the names of brothers of Christ that Mary had after him. I mean, she had 30 years to do it, you know, so between the time he was born and when he started ministering. So, yeah, I mean, and it sounds like sisters. Is there a problem with him having brothers and sisters? Let me see here in the chat. Cornelius, you say perhaps Joseph had a first marriage. Now, oh man, see, that's why I wish I had been able to study this a little there's a writing called the Proto-Evangelion of Mary that talks about Joseph and Mary before Christ was born. And I bet it talks about some of that, and I can't remember, honestly, what it says. I need to do some study, because I might be able to find some stuff out about that. I think that there's some things to be understood there that I can't remember, because my memory is not all that it could be. That's why I write lots of things down. Cornelius, yeah, it would make sense, perhaps. Jason Sumner, you say Mark 3 says, or 6:3 says, isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, Simon? That's good. Yeah, so Mark 3, let's see. Mark 6, sorry, I keep saying it wrong. I'm dyslexic, by the way. I don't know if y'all knew that. I'm dyslexic. It's true. I switch things all the time in my head. It's probably because I had vaccines when I was small. But you live, you learn. Yeah, so in Mark 6:3 then, we go to the Greek there. Again, I bet it's this word adelphos. Yep, adelphos, brother, same word. So yeah, it sounds to me like it's likely that he did have siblings. Squiffy, you're dyslexic too? Good. Well, then I can say iffy square, and you know what I'm talking about. If I call on you that way. Biffy square or whatever. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's funny. No, numbers are the worst too. Like, I can seriously look at a number and then turn around and I'll say the number back and I'll switch the letters. I'll switch the numbers every time, just about. And I am aware of it. I know I'm doing it. It's just something, you get used to, and then you're like, wait, I think I switched it that time. Let's go back. Oh my gosh. Anyway. Yes. So let me see. Rick, you say it's no problem for you. You actually thought it was empowering that Christ had brothers and sisters. Yeah, I mean, she was a real woman. And apparently she was going to marry Joseph. So, whether he had kids from beforehand or she had some after Christ, they did get married, and then she went ahead and had some more children. Sounds like both things possible. I don't think I have a problem with it at all. Nothing jumps out at me. But it is something I'd like to understand a little better. You mentioned the Catholic Church. Someone said the Catholic Church denies that Jesus had. Where was that? Yes, Rick, you say the Catholic Church says there were no additional children in the family. It makes me wonder, why would the Catholic Church want that message? Why would that empower the Catholic Church? Is it because of who Mary was? Because she was the what do they call her? The Immaculate, not the Immaculate Conception. What do they call her? The something mother. The Catholic Mary, they probably wouldn't want her to have other children, because to them, she's essentially deified in the Catholic Church, a god, so to speak. So I guess that's why they would not want Christ to have brothers and sisters, because it would mean that the deity Mary had other children, and there were others that were as, quote, important as Christ, because they definitely put Mary right up there with Christ and the Father at some level, and I don't. That baffles my mind. I've never had a Catholic mentality, but everything that I learn about it, it's really strange to me. But I know some people on the channel are Catholic or are ex-Catholic, so I can't knock it too hard. I just don't understand how that happens, where they essentially deify Mary. Yeah, the perpetual virginity of Mary. Thank you, Jason Sumner. That's what they say. They do. So that's why they do that. Interesting. I wonder how they explain away that passage. Seems strange to me, man. It's strange. All right. And Linda Connor, I think you're right. The family stories over dinner would be interesting. Like, So you healed him right there in the middle of the building? And you told the Pharisees you would forgive their sins? Oh my goodness. That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. All right. I think we'll move to the next topic then, guys. Sounds good. That's the best I can do, Rick. But that's a good one. That's an interesting little thing because I didn't know about the controversy. So that to me is interesting. All right. Let's go on then. We're doing good on time. Always trying to be mindful of y'all's morning. Don't want to take too much away from your day. Eternal punishment versus annihilationism. Annihilation. All right. Eternal punishment. Yes. I think what we'll do is we probably need to go to Revelation. I think we need to go Revelation. So let's do that. Let's go to the Bible, book of Revelation. I think what I want to do is go to chapter 20 for starters, because I know this is a place that talks about what's going to happen to people in the end. Okay, so there's lots of things in the Bible about, where the worm dies not. That's probably Hades, okay? We do hear a couple places about Gehenna, which is the lake of fire. So that's an interesting reference that you need to be aware of. The reason they used the word Gehenna is because they had a steaming, hot, smelly, smoldering pile of burning trash in the valley of Hinnom outside of Jerusalem. And so they used it as a reference to the eternal fires of the hell, of the lake of fire. So when they mention Gehenna in the New Testament, they're talking about the lake of fire. That's why they use that reference. They're not talking about the physical Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom. They're not talking about that. It's just they used it as the reference because it was a continual fire. So it showed them a picture of the lake of fire in hell. So the reality is there's a lot of talk about that, but this is the place, it says, where people start getting thrown in there, okay? A couple times in, let's see, I'm actually going to do this. Lake of fire. And so just a few, lake of fire is specifically spelled out that way only in Revelation. That's interesting. So in Revelation 19, verse 20, after the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies wage war against him who sits on the horse, Christ, and I believe this happened in the first century, the beast was taken, him with the false prophet, the wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived those that had received the mark and those that worshipped his image, and they were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. So this is a case in which are humans, at this point, it's not talking about humans, it's talking about, well, let's see. The beast and the false prophet. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, with which he deceived them, and then that received the mark, and those that worshipped the image. But these both, I'm assuming the both is the two subjects, meaning the beast and the false prophet. They are cast into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. Okay? So we know that these two spiritual creatures, the beast and the false prophet, and perhaps they're human counterparts because the beast was manifested in Nero for a time, and the false prophet, as I believe, was manifested in Simon Magus for a time. But I believe those were spiritual entities working through those men. I don't believe it was just the men. But those were cast into the lake of fire at the time. Okay, so that's one instance. So we have to understand how it's used, the lake of fire is used before we talk about eternal punishment or torture versus annihilationism, okay? In Revelation 20, which is where I'd started there, verse 10, after the devil is defeated, when he deceives the nations and from the four quarters of the earth, goes to Gog and Magog, they go up on the breadth of the earth, campus the camp of saints, the beloved city. The fire comes down from God out of heaven, devours them. And the devil that deceives them was and we got to be careful here, guys. I don't want to confuse on the chronology here. I'm trying to make sure of something. Okay. I don't know for 100% sure the chronology is that right after that war happens, that the devil is cast in the lake of fire. The events in this chapter, by the way, in Revelation 20, span thousands of years, if you didn't know already. It talks about a 1,000-year period, releasing of Satan, this war of Gog and Magog. Now it's talking about the devil being cast in the lake of fire. The chronology on that, the timing, is hard to know exactly. Okay, I'm just going to put that out there. But then the devil, in the end, and this I believe is in our future, is cast into the lake of fire and brimstone as well, where the beast and the false prophet are. It even calls out that, yes, the beast and false prophet were already put there. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. All right? So that, by the way, we need to know the Greek here because it's important. You see, it says, they were cast into the lake of fire and sulfur, where are also the beast and false prophet, the pseudo-prophet. That's interesting how the Greek reads. And they will be tormented. This word in Greek, basanes thesontai. Interesting. I've never said that word before. Fun. But it doesn't say, by the way, when we think of the word forever, the problem is in Greek and in Hebrew, the word forever is not really forever. Okay? So they rendered this forever and ever in the King James. But you see here, it's the eons. Okay, it's ages for ages and ages. How many ages? Is this a forever statement? It may be, but it's not equivalent to us saying forever. It literally says, and these are plural words, to the ages of the ages. So perhaps that is a forever statement. But we need to be aware it's not the exact same thing as just saying infinite forever in English. Okay. All right. So this is how the lake of fire seems to be used. Now in Revelation 20, further on, it goes down in verse 14 and 15. This is when the books are opened, the books of life by God on his throne. And everyone, every human, all the dead are judged according to their works. Now, because they're judged according to their works, I tend to think this is talking about the non-Christians. All right? Because we are not, our eternal destination because of Christ is not based on our works necessarily. It's based on Christ's redemption. Now, we do the works to, quote, as the New Testament puts it, prove Christ. Okay, we prove what he did for us by our works, by being holy, being righteous. But that's not part of the law, and it's not a, quote, requirement. It's just something we give back because of what he did. And it's very clear in the New Testament that that's how it's talked about. So, I just want to mention that I believe this is the end of time, the end of the physical world, where the dead are then brought up before God for judgment according to their works. The dead in Hades, okay? And these are, as far as I can tell, not Christians. The earth gives up its dead, the sea gives up its dead, Hades gives up its dead, and they were judged, okay? And then death and hell, the two principalities of Hades, and in Greek this is Thanatos and Hades. They are two principalities. They are then cast into the lake of fire, just like the devil and the false prophet and the beast. They're all spiritual entities cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And then it says, whoever was not found in the book of life was also cast into the lake of fire. So there you go. That makes it seem like For one, all the examples except this one are of spiritual entities being thrown in the lake of fire as an eternal form of punishment, or age to age after age, punishment in the lake of fire. And it sounds like perhaps those spiritual entities don't die, so to speak. They are immortal, by the way, anyway, but perhaps they spend their ages of torture and torment there. Now, this also seems to be saying, or at least hinting, that the people who are wicked end up in that lake of fire as the second death as well. Now, it sounds like, I'll say this, on the surface, it feels like that may last forever, whatever that means, okay? But I also am not 100% sure on that. There is also the idea that that is the end of those beings. And I leave room for that perspective because I don't know 100%. There's a lot of, for instance, medieval Christian texts that kind of reinforce the torture aspect of not necessarily the lake of fire, but just Hades. You have Dante's Inferno, of course. That's actually a really good writing for Christians to read. So you think about the things that are being said there. And you think to yourself, is that just a fantasy tale he told? Or was it based on things that they knew at that time? It's a good question. There's other Christian writings that kind of echo the sentiment of Dante's Inferno, by the way. Earlier Christian writings. But that aside, there was this concept of the wicked dead going to Hades and suffering torture at the hands of dark angels in Hades, demons, if you will. And that was their temporary punishment for the life they lived on earth. Okay? So that's in Hades. But this, in the book of Revelation, is talking about when they are judged then according to their works, and then the wicked are thrown in the lake of fire. So I can't know 100% whether this is eternal torment for these people or whether that's just the end of them. They already were tortured for a while in Hades if they were wicked, according to all the writings we know about. All right. So they already did that tour of duty in Hades. And I, the other thing I can't do is I can't fault God for punishing wickedness. I deserve punishment for some of the wicked things I've done. I deserve that, but Christ came along and paid the price for that sin. And I accept Christ and what he did, and I have accepted everything that he has offered. A lot of people argue against that acceptance of Christ's gift. Like, some Calvinists will kind of get on that and say like, well, God was working in you behind the scenes and you just accepted because he made you do it. Well, the reality is that doesn't follow the pattern of what God tells us about Christ. What God tells us about Christ is that we have a debt we owe. And if you're in front of a judge and you owed a debt to the judge, say you had committed a crime and you're in front of the judge, what has happened is that Christ has offered himself in your place to pay the sentence. And that's actually talked about in early Christian writings and stuff like that. So the reality is, in even a court of law, if someone did that, you could refuse their offer. Do you understand that? You can refuse the offer of someone to come in your place. You still would have that control in a court of law. You say, no, I'm going to serve my sentence. I'm going to go to hell. Okay? But Christ offers it, and then when we accept it, the judge, God, is satiated for your sin. Do you understand how that works? It's beautiful. And in fact, Jews, I did a video a while back on the Jewish perspective of, Christianity. It had some stuff to do with that, where I was debunking these Jewish concepts of their explanations of why Christ wasn't the Messiah. And one of them was this idea that it's silly to think that God would allow you to just not pay your debt. Of course, they are saying the Jews think you have to pay all your debts, and that's great. Good for them. But the reality is, when Christ came before the judge and offers himself, he turns to you and says, do you accept my offer to pay the price in your place? And you say, yes, Judge, I accept the offer of your son to take my place. Without that, it doesn't happen. If you refuse that offer, Christ says, I guess he's refusing my offer to cleanse his sin and pay the price for that, for what he has done. And Christ leaves. He leaves the courtroom. And then you're left to fend for yourself. So I just wanted to say that. It's kind of a gospel message. But, that's important to understand how that works. So that we don't have to go to the lake of fire in the second death, right? So I don't know. I'm getting off track a little bit. But your question, Deborah Miller, on eternal punishment versus annihilationism, I typically lean toward an eternal punishment, but I also leave room for the fact that it's possible that second death is a final death, and that those people, when they go in the lake of fire, unlike the perhaps Satan or the false prophet, I don't know. I can't know everything, but I leave room for the possibility. Of course, this possibility will never affect my life or my existence after this life, but the possibility that the wicked are essentially annihilated in the lake of fire when they get there, that is the end of them. So I leave room for both kind of viewpoints. I do. So anyway, let's see what you guys are seeing. Or what you're saying, excuse me. Yeah. Tomcat, you say man only becomes immortal when raised with the Holy Spirit like Jesus. Man is not immortal. Hound Jog, aren't demons living in volcanoes leading to hell? Hound Jog, I don't know. That's a good idea. It's an interesting idea. And I don't know 100%. If we dug down far enough or went to the right places in the underworld, would we find demons? Would we find these creatures that we don't understand because we just essentially never talk about it, never think about it? What's underground? What's under your feet? Do you think there's a molten core burning under our feet of the earth? We've never dug anywhere close to deep enough to know what's under there. The furthest that we in modern times know that we've ever been underground is, I think, about 7 miles, and that was the Kola Deep Super Borehole in Russia. Kola Super Deep Borehole in Russia. And so it was a mining expedition, and they dug as far as they could. They went about 7 or 8 miles. And they didn't find any evidence of anything but different rock strata. They didn't. And of course, by the way, according to modern science, what is 7 miles versus the radius of the Earth? What's the radius of the Earth? I think it's 4,000 or so. That's like less than 1% of the distance to the core or to the center. So they know nothing. They know nothing about what's under our feet. I'll just say it that way. Other than that they can tunnel and build like secret bases under there, and think they're being sneaky. They do know that much. But they're not tunneling and going like 7 miles deep with most of that. So maybe they are, actually. I don't know. I don't know what they do. Who knows what they do down there and what they know. I mean, if we could go into Fringe Land and we could talk about, for instance, Rob Schneider's testimony, where he says that they found the things, they found these beings under there as he was doing geological work for these tunneling programs underneath America, that they encountered a race of beings that looked like what we would call the gray aliens. You can do with that what you will. You may think I'm crazy for mentioning it. I don't care. Go look at Rob Schneider videos. They're all over the internet, and he seems like a pretty credible guy. He had a couple fingers blown off while he was working underground, and he seems credible. And he was also killed in his own home shortly after he did this tour where he spoke about all these things. What do you do with that? I don't know. But I'm just saying, we don't know much about what's underneath us. So Houndjog, you could be 100% right. The demons could be right under the surface and we would not even know it, would we? Right? Just saying. Oh, you're right. I said Rob Schneider, Canjas. You're right. It's Phil Schneider. Sorry. Phil Schneider. Some of that dyslexia attacking again, I guess. I don't know. Rob Schneider, he's a funny guy too, though. You know? Yeah, you're right. It's Phil Schneider. Sorry about that. Houndjog, you say there's a huge delay for your comments. You must be on a watch list. Yeah, you might be. I don't know. I wish I had more control. I don't. All right. What have we got on time? Ooh, we're kind of late on time. Let's see. What's the other things we've got on the topic list here? The next one on the list was Katie McD. You asked about my thoughts on the old world. Let's do that real quick because we'll talk about it. So we'll talk about this real quick. The old world, the mud floods, the orphan trains, repopulation. I saw a real interesting video the other day that came across my channels on Telegram, I think. And it, by the way, Bible Scribe has a Telegram channel if you're interested. You can search for it. Just search for Bible Scribe, no space, and you should find it if you want to join there. All I do there really is announce new videos when they come out and when we're going to do the live streams and all that stuff. But anyway, it's a cool platform. Yeah, I ran across this video the other day that was talking about insane asylums in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so that to me was an interesting perspective on this whole old world thing, mud floods, orphan trains, repopulation. Definitely got me thinking a little bit more, you know. But, you know, Katie McD, I think you're newer, and I don't think you were here when I did it. But one of my older live streams, I did the topic of the World's Fairs. Let me look at my list so I know and can at least lead you to that. Yeah, this one right here. So let me share it on the screen. You can see it, and I'll put the link in the chat for you guys if you want to look at it. I did the Chicago World's Fair of 1893. It's one of the most, you know, examined ones by the Mud Flood, Tartaria kind of group. And so I inspected that thing over the week prior to this live stream. So I actually had some really good material on this. I went over the entire Chicago exposition of 1893, and I looked at a bunch of these books. So I'll link you to this page, and you can, of course, come down here at the bottom and click to watch it on YouTube if you want. My live stream that I did that. So let me put that in the chat real quick before I continue. Chicago World's Fair. There you go. So yeah, that's the link to that page. So, oh crap, never mind. I did that. Oh guys, that's not it. That's the wrong link. That's not going to work for you. Sometimes it just doesn't work the way you wanted it to. This link, that link. Okay. What I did in that was I went and I found a bunch of old writings from that time period on the Chicago World's Fair. And I literally read through them, okay? I read through a bunch of them. And everything I saw was exactly what the modern viewpoint of those World's Fairs is, that they were built to reflect a a surge, an increase in technology by the people of the time. They were also excited about the advent of distribution by train. The train was such a huge, vast improvement to society. It allowed them to transport goods across massive distances. And so the train was seen as one of these huge advances in technology. And because they now felt like they could, quote, feed the modern world by moving vast amounts of food and resources across countries and to the far reaches of the earth, they felt like humanity was in this time where, industrialism was coming in, and they felt like humanity was reaching a time of such great advancement that they were going to take care of and solve the world's needs, hunger, the poor, destitute of the world would have their needs taken care of because there were so many advances happening. And so these World's Fairs were, in essence, to celebrate that kind of thing. And I'll just say, as I read through these books on the World's Fair, there was nothing spectacular about them other than people's expectations of what humanity was going to be able to do in their future. So they would build these incredible facade buildings for the World's Fair. They would build a lot of real things that were just incredible. Some of the exhibits on the electricity from Tesla and others, and all the different things going on was very invigorating for humanity. But I literally have the programs from that World's Fair that talk about the different exhibits in that video, and I have all these other things. And everything was just, we in this exhibit, this World's Fair, we're trying to essentially even recreate what heaven might be like, because we feel like humanity is getting there. And that was all they were doing. So, a lot of that stuff has made me question the whole kind of Tartaria thing a little bit more. Really re-examine it. Is some of that stuff really evidenced, or is it just people, using a lot of interesting information, no doubt interesting, and making a narrative that is impressive and gets views on YouTube or whatever. Now, in regard to all of that, now there's nothing about any of that that's not interesting. Like, I saw also another video recently that it was a video about the Little Rascals TV series from the early 1900s. And it showed how that interwove with a lot of different of these theories about the Cabbage Patch Kids and the orphans. The Little Rascals was a group of orphans, right? That was a really interesting video. I don't remember. I could probably find it easily. I think I took the notes down somewhere. But yeah, the orphan trains is a very weird thing. Like, I don't know where all those kids came from, but I haven't seen any evidence yet to tell me where they came from. So for me to guess at that, I don't know what do they say happened? The mud flood killed everyone except the kids, or everyone except the kids was raptured because it was the end of the millennium? I don't believe that's true. I don't personally believe that's true. I don't have good evidence of that. The quote evidence of the mud floods is simply a whole heck of a lot of sediment covering up the bottoms of buildings, covering up old buildings, and then it looks like whatever happened, they started then building on top of some of those foundations, in subsequent years. But the interesting thing about that too is we even do stuff like that now in modern cities. Like, I live somewhat near a large city, and not too long ago, they were building a new skyrise. And for a while, they hadn't really started development. They had just blasted out and removed everything from underneath it. And I could look down in the hole, which was like 60 feet deep at least, a big, like the whole foundation area of this building. It was all blocked off so you couldn't get in there, but there was this huge hole, the footprint of a building, and under there was some old structures, from older buildings. But, a lot of times cities, when they redo areas, they'll even, especially in further back, they would tear up the roads and regrade everything. They might even bring in dirt, to regrade everything. They might even cover up a building up to a certain level if they knew they're going to build on top of it. So all I'm saying is that there's so many explanations that you could give for the quote evidence of the groups that are doing the Orphan Train videos, the Tartaria videos, the quote earthly millennial kingdom videos. By the way, I've also read about Tartaria, specifically in the writings of Marco Polo, and he wrote in, what was it, like 1290 area time frame or something like that. Literally a book from 1290 AD talking about Tartaria and the king of Tartaria and the people of Tartaria and the armies of Tartaria, saying that they were not a Christian nation, but that the king liked Christianity and wanted his people to become Christian because he thought that the king of the Christians was the true king, the true God of all. And so there's all this different information that, I'm trying to juggle, and I haven't found enough synchronicity between any of it yet to actually teach on any of it. It's a little too speculative right now still. Too far-fetched. None of it's fitting together. So I don't know if that's any kind of answer for you, Katie McD. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. I just wish I had more information to give anybody on it. I see the dates that look like they might start with an I instead of a 1, right? I see that on coins. It does seem that might have some validity, maybe. It's just not something I can confirm. Anyway, I think that's as far as I'll go today on that topic, because it's just, again, anytime you guys want to send me information you've found on this that is really well evidenced or sourced, please send it to me. You can go to my website. You can go over here on my website. You can go to contact. It shows my email right there, biblescribe@proton.me. Proton.me. Send me an email with anything you found. I'll look at it. It is, you will not be bugging me. You just send me anything you want, and I'll take a look. But anyway, I think that's all I'll say about that right now. It's one of those really tough things right now. I think too, by the way, I'm just going to say this. I think we're in a time period where people are wanting things to change so badly. They're trying to, in their head, make sense of what's going on right now. And so they are, in a sense, fabricating some things that help them cope with what's going on right now. What's going on right now is a tragedy, okay? It's one of the most crazy times in my lifetime. And I think, looking back in history, one of the craziest times in human history. And so I think some people they're finding interesting things, all of that information, the mud flood stuff, learning about Tartaria, orphan trains, it's all interesting. It's all strange. We don't understand all of it. But I think some people might be putting those little hints of information together in a way that soothes some of the problems they're facing in the current day. And we need to probably do more work on facing the problems that we are seeing today. For instance, I want to say this. This is gross. I don't even like talking about it, but I'm going to say it. God help me. I don't know how many of you know this. Probably most of you. I would imagine a lot of people do. There is a video that was leaked by somebody that's going around the internet right now of a man having homosexual sexual activity inside a Senate hearing room in the government of the United States. It happened recently. So this type of thing, this type of crazy, ridiculous nonsense is causing people to just, their brains are exploding. They're going 100 different directions. They don't know what's going on, because they're like, I never thought this kind of thing would happen ever. And it's scary. It's a little scary, right? What's scary about that, by the way, I want you to hear this. If you're aware of this story, It's not that it happened. This is what I want people to think about. It's not scary that this happened. That some guy, some stupid Senate staffer got some wild harebrained idea with his butt buddy to go into the Senate hearing room and do this thing. That to me is less scary than the fact that there is security and there are, Capitol Police or whatever, monitoring that room 24/7. And that in this case, you had something like this happen and all the people responsible for looking over those areas and knowing that that was going on, they didn't say a thing about it. They didn't report it. What that tells me is that they're complicit. They knew about it. They know that this kind of thing happens often and that they have been told to ignore this kind of thing when it happens. That's the truth, and that's what's so scary about all of this. It's not the fact that it happened. That stuff happens all the time. But the fact that it happened in our Senate hearing room, yours and mine, we paid for that room. And we paid for the security guards that should have been watching that 24/7. And they are being told to stand down when they see this kind of thing going on. Maybe one of them had had enough, and that's why they released the video on the internet. Maybe that's what happened. But what this says is that this kind of thing is happening all the time. And I'm just throwing that out there. I thought about it this week. I wanted to say it to somebody. But I think this is the kind of thing that's throwing people's brains into a tailspin. And mine included in some regard. But I think we just have to be careful. Again, that's why I try to do everything on this channel evidence-based. If I'm trying to tell you something, I'm going to try to give you the place I found it. And hopefully it's a reliable source. I try to vet everything I do. But then if I don't know, I want to tell you I don't know about this thing. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. I don't know the answers on all of this stuff on the bottom of the screen here. But the problem is we've got a ton of people out there right now. Their minds going in 100 directions because they want something to help them understand. And they put pieces together in their heads, but it's not really evidenced. It's not really supported by the things they call evidence. So we just have to be careful. That's all I would say. I wish I had more information for you, KDD, on that, like answers, but I don't think that many people do. I don't think many people do. So that's where I'll kind of leave that. But at least I got to rant on that thing in the Senate. Yeah, what's going on with our retarded country? The whole lot of them. That also means, by the way, our entire Senate is corrupt. The entire thing, the House needs to come down. The whole House needs to come down on their heads. Samson, go knock the pillars down. Bring them all down. Take them to hell. Get rid of them. I'm done. But God, please save the remnant. If there is a remnant in the Senate or the House, save the remnant. Whoever they are, I'm not even sure. Whatever. Anyway. Rafa, you say Tartaria is a distraction. Half-truths. I lost my interest, though there is some truth about it. I decided to keep my eyes on Jesus. I read and research the Bible. Rafa, that's probably the most mature thing you could say about it. I think that's 100% true. I think that that's the thing. Until I see something that's going to really be like, wow, that's real evidence. That's real material. Like, then I'm going to like study that further. I've seen a lot of those videos. I know what they're talking about, but I just, until they can prove to me that cymatics were used to build the windows of the church cathedrals in Europe, until they can prove it, I won't believe it. Or give me better evidence than just like showing me, you know, sand going in patterns over a speaker. You know, I'm sorry, whatever. Sorry. I don't mean to get off. It's interesting stuff. It's just not proof. It's not good enough for me. Okay. Well, guys, I think that's good. We've gone through some good stuff today. Am I holding service next Sunday? Next Sunday would be Christmas Eve. Yes, I think we will. Don't you? You guys vote on it right now. Tell me if you'd like to do a Christmas Eve service. I think I would like to do that. And yeah, I thought you guys would. I thought that would be cool. I don't know if it'll happen at the same time. Let me think about that. But again, as always, I will put on my website, on that little notice, I will put, just like I did for today, as you can see on your screen, I'll put something about that so it'll be real clear what we're going to do, if it's going to be any different than this week, than the normal time. Maybe at the same time, but let me think about that, and just stay aware, stay alert there, and I'll post it. It'll be great because you're my church family. I think that's just appropriate. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time today. Oh, let me change my message here. It's been a pleasure this morning, guys. Absolute pleasure, as always. Thank you for joining. Sam Big, you were a little late, but I'm sure you'll catch up on us. Yeah, Sam, it's okay. We were talking at that point just about all that Tartaria stuff, but it's good to see your face at least. Get to say hi before we head out here. God bless all you guys. Thank you so much for your time and for your concern and care for me and for everyone else on the channel. Again, pray for one another. I think this is a big deal, that we pray for each other. Even if you're praying for a name that's not someone's real name, God knows. God knows that. He does. So I appreciate all of you guys. God bless you. Take care this week. Stay safe. Keep your eyes open. Be alert. Be aware. And God bless you.